In present day Scotland, two American tourists visit a local bar. Inside, they take a look at the famous photo of Loch Ness Monster. But an old guy informs that the photo is fake and there is more to the story than they realize. The couple sat at the table and settled in for the whole narrative. In 1942, during the World War II, a child named Angus McMorrow glances out over the lake. He fantasizes about wading through it, but the fantasies turn into a nightmare as the boy imagines drowning back in the real world. Angus keeps away from the ocean, collecting shells from the shoreline. He thinks about his father, a sailor in the Royal Navy, who informed that the pool was weird, enchanting realm under the sea. Agnes finds a giant, strange-looking egg in the sand and chooses to take it home. Angus is found by his mother, Annie, who instructs him to return home. Angus and Annie return to their manor house in Loch Ness. As his sister Christy comes asking if Angus had fun off shore, he proceeds to wash the pebble off bucket, revealing a dazzling blue coating beneath. As he rushes off for a dinner, the egg begins to move on its own. That night, Angus is awakened by a noise outside. When he checks through the window, he realizes the shed door has magically opened. When he checks the shed, he finds out the egg he brought from the sea has hatched. He also sees an alien-like mysterious creature in the dark. He grabs a potato and feeds the animal. The animal has cuts. He attempts to bandage the animal and keeps it as a secret. Next morning, Angus wakes up to witness a parade of military vehicles coming. Believing that his father had returned, he, his mother, and sister joyfully rush out to see it up close. But Captain Thomas Hamilton tells that the Royal Air Force has been assigned with taking over the manor residence for military operation. Angus knows that these trained killers constitute a threat to his close friend. As the soldiers set up camp in the house, Captain Hamilton says that the soldiers are preparing for the prospect of German invasion. Angus returns to the shed to find that the creature has ripped the place apart in search of food. Trying to protect his father's valuables for a little while, Angus goes to acquire some food for the pet, but the army's cook Sergeant Strunk refuses to let him do anything on his feet. Angus grabs the trash can and drags it to the shed. The beast dives directly into the garbage container, eating pretty about everything within. Angus decides to name the creature Crusoe after the novel Robinson Crusoe. As Crusoe enjoys his feast, Angus begins investigating what kind of animal is living in his shed, but none of possibilities make sense. Angus recounts how his father told him all about a mythological monster that lives in Loch and how he always longed to see it. Angus discovers that the organism, which appears to be some kind of fish, is all dried up. He tosses a pail of water into garbage can, hoping to assist the small fellow survive. While a pair of fishermen on the loch caught some fish for lunch, they watched the soldiers building up the artillery battery atop the hill. Captain Hamilton adds that the officers have been charged with fighting against the threat of German U-boats that have been detected roaming in local seas while exploring the grounds. Once again, realizing the threat these individuals offer to his new friend Crusoe, he runs. Annie enters the shed to discover the place in absolute chaos and mess. She takes a minute to remember her spouse, but is disturbed by the arrival of Louis Mowbray, the handyman and hire. She tasks him with clearing the filth of the sheds and emptying the space. Annie reveals that she fears Angus is keeping a pet in the shed, something he is plainly not authorized to do, and begs Louis to handle the problem. He comes out of the home to see Louis emptying the rubbish can, but to his astonishment, Crusoe isn't inside. Angus fights Louis, seeking to defeat his father's workshop while he is off fighting in the war. Louis says that workshop is his to do anything he wants at night. Angus searches the grounds looking for Crusoe, something Louis notices inside the manor. A rapidly growing Crusoe explores the family home and accidentally encounters with the military dog Churchill, who follows him. Crusoe narrowly gets to escape, but the housekeeping staff blames the military and their dog. Angus is ready to give up the search when Christy lets out a scared cry. He rushes up to see Crusoe covering in her filled bathtub. Angus tells his sister the creature is completely harmless and asks her not to tell her mother about this creature. Annie asks Louis to check out the guest bathroom and provides fresh clothes that once belonged to her spouse. He respectfully rejects, asking if he will need them when he arrives home. But Annie tells that her husband isn't coming home. His His ship was sunk a year ago and he is presumed gone ever since. Annie reveals to him that Angus is confused, clearly unable to face his father's possible death. Angus and Christie do their best to keep a still growing Crusoe quiet, but nothing appears to be working. Louis arrives to fix the restroom, which allegedly out of order against Angus' orders. Christie allows Louis inside, where he sets eyes on Crusoe almost immediately. Louis wonders if Crusoe is perhaps a water horse, a myth from Celtic lore. According to mythology, only one can exist in the world at a time. When one grows old, it lays an egg and dies. The new egg contains the next water horse. As Annie searches for children, Angus asks Louis for help before she can enter the restroom. Christie and Louis distracts her, claiming that they were helping Louis explore the problem, and thanks to them, they fixed it. Her suspicions get the better of her and she heads inside the bathroom. Inexplicably, they found out the bathtub is empty and the water horse has vanished. Louis helps to fool and deceive Annie, having hidden the water horse in the toilet. Suspicious but trusting the trick, she leaves the bathroom on the walk down to the main floor and meets into Captain Hamilton, who asks Annie to a meal he is organizing as a sign of thanks. She happily agrees. Louis recommends Angus to move the water horse out of house and into Loch as the best location for him, but Angus desperately refuses, believing that the greatest place for Crusoe is to be with him. On the night of the supper, Annie searches through her wardrobe, discovering one of the classy gowns she hasn't worn in a while. In the bathroom, Angus feeds the water horse tinned fish, but on the way out, Angus' homemade sign stopped the door from closing. The water horse, scrambling to retrieve the fish, falls out of the bathtub in kitchen. The military and the home staff dance together, but Churchill the dog can smell something unusual and runs off to the source. When Angus and Christie walk into them just seconds later, Angus notices that the dog is missing upstairs. The water horse travels the hallways just to come face to face with Churchill. Churchill pursues the water horse over home, resulting to a great havoc throughout. Upon reaching the hunting room, Crusoe was horrified to see himself around by stuffed, mounted and dead animals everywhere. Angus and Christie followed the sound of breaking and crashing during the military supper. Captain Hamilton and Annie could hear the loud smashing noises throughout the house. Eventually, the chase breaks into rigged banquet hall, with Churchill carelessly racing across the table, leaving the large mess behind. While Crusoe manages to escape without being noticed, Louis apologizes to Annie and the soldiers, stating that he was trying to catch the dog. Captain Hamilton shows his displeasure, but Louis refuses to take orders from him and asks him to take Angus to his chamber, which he agrees to do. Outside, Crusoe disguises himself as a statue, which fools the dog. He dives in and begins eating, hunting for Angus. Louis intercepts him, offering to retrieve the water horse if he returns to the room. Angus returns to room by hearing Louis. When the sun starts to rise in the morning, Louis finds Crusoe in the pond, but a lot bigger. He calls Angus to have a look. Angus drives back to Loch, sending the water horse back to its natural environment. Captain Hamilton waits for Louis in shed, instructing the handyman to stay away from Angus. In Louis' eyes, Louis is a harmful influence. While out on the sea, two fishermen accidentally hook the water horse and discover their modest fishing boat being pulled along behind. Reluctantly, the fishermen cut the line to preserve their boat. Captain Hamilton swears to convert him into a disciplined soldier. After days of training, Angus breaks free and flees from his terrible military existence. He returns to the water to see a fully grown Crusoe, who is pleased to see him after a little swimming. The water horse begins to dive against the Angus wishes, but over time, Angus grows to enjoy, overcoming his fear of water in the process. When they return below the surface, Angus discovers a bizarre metal net being set up, evidently a trap for submarines attempting to enter the lake while out for a walk. Churchill the dog breaks loose of his military master and goes in pursuit of water horse. Angus urges Crusoe to hide right as Strunt approaches, but it's too late. Sergeant Strunt spots the thing as it dives below the surface. Angus tells Louis and Christie about Crusoe and thanks Louis for making Angus laugh. Captain Hamilton, watching their chat, is horrified to hear that Louis is a decent man with a spotless war record. He is an hero in the pub. The fishermen quickly inform the others about the unusual sea beast they observed. The locals suggest that this news could bring tourists flocking to the area. The next day, fishermen come to the loch with camera, preparing to snapshot the beast in hopes of winning rich. Meanwhile, Captain Hamilton takes Annie and the children to see what they are doing at the loch. Hamilton reveals that the military is ready to practice firing cannons into the loch. Angus informs his mother about the creature in the loch, but she doesn't believe him. Christie backs him up, but it's no good. The guns are fired into the loch, many of them almost striking Crusoe. Angus tries to interrupt the firing. It angers Hamilton. He tells Annie that her son needs discipline. Hamilton sends the family to the home. The fisherman thinks the creature will not come to the surface due to the firing, so they decide to fake the photo of Loch Ness Monster. Angus is sent to his room at 6 o'clock every night for a month and is not permitted to go. The false photo in the press, Sergeant Strick explains that it's exactly what he observed on the loch. Sergeant Walker joyfully swears to go hunting for the beast. With Louis' help, they walk to the lake where Angus shouts out for the Crusoe. The water horse rises fiercely, bellowing and biting at Angus. Regardless, Angus tries to reconcile with his pal, still scared by the bombardment and near-death experience. Crusoe almost bites off the boy's hand before diving into the water, having smelled the water horse. As Churchill leads the military to the lake, the men take to the water armed with harpoons. Crusoe kills the dog and surprises the troops. One of them calls it as SOS. Crusoe blindsides the troops, capsizing the boat. Hamilton apologizes to Annie, but is interrupted by SOS call, believing that Germans are attacking. Hamilton tells Annie and the kids to go into the basement, where they learn that Angus is at the loch and prepared to grab him. Despite Hamilton's orders at the loch, Crusoe terrorizes and almost kills the soldier, while Angus tries to put an end to the tragedy by wading into the water. But Angus slips on a rock, plunging underwater and becomes unconscious. Crusoe jumps under, seizing him, and saves his life on the shore. Louis tries to wake him up. Hamilton drives Annie to the loch, ordering his men to fire at will if they spot anything moving under the loch. While he is unconscious, Angus recalls his final meeting with his father, which he was asked to be strong and sure. Angus gasps to the life, thrilled to see his old pal again and considerably less violent. The water horse disappears into the water as Anne and Hamilton arrive. Angus and troops attempt to explain everything that happened, but it's apparent nobody believes them and accuses Louis of putting foolishness into the heads of children, arguing there are no monsters or magic, just war and death, and turns to see a gigantic creature providing her terribly wrong. Angus claims that water horse is harmless, but the moment is disrupted by another cannon being fired. He tries to save Crusoe by jumping on the water horse back and praying they don't shoot at him. His frightened mother is forced to watch as the cannons rain on Hamilton. Annie and Louis race to the submerged net as the soldiers resume their savage onslaught. Angus does his best to steer Crusoe to the net amid the barrage of cannon fire, but the stormy weather makes the soldiers mistake Crusoe's neck for submarine periscope. Angus realizes they have to swim below, and the couple just about to make into the net. Still believing that it is a German boat, the soldiers began raising the nets to capture the target. Angus and Crusoe comes to a stop near the nets. Hamilton and Louis arrive, pushing Angus to let his friend go. Reluctantly, Angus leaves go of his best buddy he ever had and returns to his family. Crusoe goes beneath the ocean and jumps to the net, pulling the military equipment down in the process. Crusoe disappears into the distance. The next day, Annie and Crusoe watch the sunrise over the loch. Angus ultimately comes to the terms with the truth that his father isn't coming home, and the group reunite to view the water horse swimming out to freedom. The water horse lets out a final roar and goes underwater for the final time. Back in the present day, the old man reveals that several have claimed to see the water horse in passing years, but Angus never sees it again. He knows because he is Angus. That the tourists leave the pub delighted with the story. Outside, a young woman searches for her son William, who walks along the shore. He finds a large, strange-looking rock that looks exactly like the egg Angus found, hinting that Crusoe has died and left behind a descendant who would become the next water horse.